Dangerous trespasser, call the police now. That's what the HOA president screamed at the officers as soon as I set foot on my own porch, barely a second before a pair of flashlights hit me square in the eyes and one of those hands hovered a little too comfortably over a holstered gun. Sounds wild, right? But that's how my weekend at Pine Lake started, and honestly, it only got stranger from there. Yeah, that happened, and if you stick with me, you'll see just how deep the roots of this story really go. What Karen Whitmore, our lovely HOA president, didn't count on was the man she never wanted to see again. The guy sitting calmly in the cabin. The one whose presence alone could make her whole world unravel. Who was he? And why did Karen, a woman who strutted around with the confidence of a small-town dictator, suddenly look like she'd seen a ghost? You ever feel like the universe is setting you up just for the drama? I'm Marcus Sullivan, 34. A software developer who inherited this little lakeside cabin from my great-aunt Dorothy after 3 months of grinding through 80-hour work weeks debugging someone else's mess. I'd pictured a peaceful weekend, me, the trees, maybe a few beers, definitely no HOA drama. But right off the bat, as I pulled up the gravel drive, I spotted soft yellow light spilling out from the back window. And weirdly, an old camera aimed at the front door. Aunt Dorothy always said, "Keep your eyes open for the truth," but I wasn't expecting it to stare back at me. I was reaching for my phone when a voice sharp as a slap rang out from the shadows. "Excuse me? You in the car?" Out came Karen. Early 60s, hair shellacked to perfection. Every inch of her screaming, "I run this place." She marched right over, announced she was calling the police on a dangerous stranger, and started reciting my address to 911 with all the drama of someone auditioning for Law and Order. I hadn't even stepped out of the car. "I'm Marcus Sullivan." I tried hands up showing my ID and a photo of the property deed. Dorothy was my great-aunt. "I own this place." Karen glared at my paperwork like she was x-raying it for hidden crimes. "Even if that's true, this cabin violates 14 HOA rules." She rattled off already in penalty mode. Wrong paint, too tall grass, unauthorized security camera. The dock was apparently an eyesore, $500 a day in fines if I didn't comply. The woman had a list and she was checking it twice. Sheriff Williams rolled up in his battered patrol car about 10 minutes later. He looked at my papers, looked at Karen, then back at me like he'd seen this show before. "Paperwork looks legit, Karen," he said. "The kind of tired you only get from dealing with one person too many." "Mr. Sullivan, mind if I check inside?" I nodded, led the way up the steps, and that's when things went off the rails. Because as soon as I opened the door, a deep, steady voice floated out. "Well, hello there, sister. Long time no see." Karen's face turned sheet white. "Ethan," she whispered. "That's impossible. You're dead." Sheriff Williams stiffened, glancing at his radio. Out of the back room stepped a man, tall, maybe late 30s, with streaks of gray in his hair, and where his left forearm should have been was a sleek prosthetic flexing with a mechanical whir. "Surprised to see me, Karen," he said, voice calm but loaded. "After all you did, push me into that swamp and watch me lose my arm to an alligator." You could feel the temperature drop. Karen looked ready to bolt or throw up, maybe both. Sheriff Williams was clearly piecing it together. "Didn't you tell everyone your brother died in Florida?" Ethan moved into the light, his face worn but unflinching. He told it straight. They'd grown up in foster care, both adopted by the Whitmores, the family who owned half the lake. Karen, always terrified of being sent back, watched their parents talk about updating their will, maybe giving a chunk to charity, instead of keeping it in the family. When Ethan discovered Karen poisoning George and Martha, their adoptive parents, with a chemical called ricin she'd learned about in her community college chemistry class, all hell broke loose. Karen panicked, took Ethan out to the Everglades to talk, shoved him into alligator water, and left him for dead. But he survived, barely, thanks to a fishing guide and a lot of luck. And then he disappeared, letting Karen think she was safe, all while he spent years gathering proof. Now he'd come back with a folder stuffed with evidence photos, bank statements, toxicology reports, showing Karen hadn't stopped at their parents'. Her ex-husband dead after brake lines were cut. The richest widow in the neighborhood poisoned smoothie, changed will. Even the family doctor who'd started to put the pieces together died of a heart attack, except it was cyanide. Karen, cornered by truth, tried to attack her brother, but Ethan just calmly restrained her with his prosthetic hand, all while Sheriff Williams watched horror mounting. Here's where things flipped again. just as Karen looked totally broken. My phone buzzed an unknown number, a voice on the line, digitally disguised, "Burn every document in that folder or your great-aunt dies." 2 hours. Karen, suddenly almost relieved, confessed Dorothy had been blackmailing her for years, squeezing out payments to keep quiet about the murders. When Karen couldn't pay, she hired some thugs from Miami to handle Dorothy, only for Ethan to reveal he'd been tracking both of them. Dorothy wasn't just some sweet old lady. She'd been documenting Karen's crimes, had hidden cameras, trackers, evidence sent to the feds. The old medical center on the edge of town. That's where Dorothy was being held, and Dorothy herself, it turned out, was the bait, not the victim. Ethan, who'd been an undercover PI for years, had already mapped out the abandoned hospital full of hidden cameras, proximity sensors, even a GPS in Dorothy's shoe. He'd been surveilling Karen's hired guns, who turned out to be mob enforcers, not small-time crooks. Suddenly, we were all targets. Karen's goons weren't just cleaning up evidence, they were planning to tie off every loose end, which included me and Ethan. As Sheriff Williams coordinated with the state police, Ethan insisted if we stormed in, Dorothy would be killed. So we went in quietly under cover of darkness with Ethan in tactical gear and me sweating through a bulletproof vest. Inside that crumbling, graffiti-tagged hospital, Dorothy's calm voice could be heard holding court with her captors, who had no idea she was a retired FBI forensic accountant with a long game in motion. She told them straight every word was being sent to the feds. When Tony Martinez, the mobster in charge, realized Karen had been skimming money off the top of mob funds to feed her gambling addiction, things changed fast. Dorothy offered the mobsters a deal turn on Karen, hand over the evidence, and maybe walk away with their lives. Then came the cavalry sirens, SWAT federal agents flooding the place. The chaos of justice arrived all at once. In the aftermath, Karen was exposed on every front: murder, embezzlement, racketeering. Dorothy, in her 80s and sharper than anyone else in the room, finally revealed her real connection. She was Martha's sister, and all along she'd been fighting for family, not just justice. That's why she'd set the perfect trap for Karen, right down to leaving the cabin to me, knowing Karen couldn't resist coming after it. 8 months later, the old cabin became the Dorothy Hamilton Sullivan Community Center. The Whitmore Sullivan Foundation used the reclaimed fortune to help foster kids and victims of crime, finally honoring George and Martha's wishes. Karen got 5 life sentences plus a couple decades for good measure. Tony and his crew turned state's evidence, helping bust a major crime ring before vanishing into witness protection and the HOA gone. In its place, a real neighborhood association where people actually had a say. Now, every sunset at Pine Lake, I watch kids swim, where there used to be secrets and fear. Dorothy bakes cookies and tells war stories. Ethan runs the foundation, and I build apps to keep power in check. No more hidden cameras, just open eyes. And you know what? After all those years of darkness, justice did show up, not as some angry force, but as the patience of people who refuse to let evil have the last word. So tell me, where do you stand on this? Was justice served, or did everyone have a little too much blood on their hands? What would you have done if you were in Dorothy's shoes, or Ethan's, or even Karen's? Drop a comment and let's hear your side, because when it comes to power secrets and second chances, nobody gets out clean, but everyone has a story worth telling.